Alright, so we got a lot of news to talk about in the last couple of days, and the first news we're going to talk about is the Colorado Rapids, who I will be doing a Moving Forward series episode right after when I finish doing this News of the Week episode. And one of the things I will definitely talk about is the Kellyn Acosta situation. So, apparently the Rapids basically trade Kellyn Acosta for up to $1.5 million general allocation money to LAFC, and you're thinking, well, it seems like it's just one of those blockbuster trade that, you know, the Rapids are going to get a ton of general allocation money, and they're going to use that to once again go through their Moneyball approach by spending some players within the league that is MLS proven talent, and once again build a good team, which most likely that is going to be the case. And then you heard that there is some situation with this trade and how there's actually more to the fact that this is just a blockbuster trade, but there seems to be some transfer saga involving Kellyn Acosta of how he actually tweeted out that he was not happy the fact that the Rapids decided to trade him to LAFC, and that he even mentioned that there was a chance that the Rapids was going to ship him off to Europe, and that there were some offer from Europe that are looking to try to get Kellyn Acosta, and the Rapids basically flat out said no, and now they're going to be trading out to LAFC. Now, that being said, you know, Acosta did say that he is happy that he is going to be going to LAFC, but there's no doubt that he is expressing frustration not only to the Rapids, but also the fact that he wants to go to Europe badly so that he can solidify himself a chance to be on the national team, especially this year is the World Cup year, and I don't blame Kellyn Acosta for doing that. I mean, for a very long time now, we have known that Acosta has been flirting to potentially go to Europe. I mean, it kind of all started during his days with FC Dallas a couple of years ago, where there was a big case that he was going to be another one of those latest Dallas Academy, eventually making the jump to Europe. And then he kind of made a weird decision to go to the Colorado Rapids, which, you know, back when the Rapids was a bottom feeder, and it was kind of a head scratcher of why would Acosta decided to go to a team that is a bottom feeder instead of maybe continue to develop his career in Europe. Well, it turns out it wasn't actually as bad of a move as it is. I mean, he eventually did make it to the national team, and again, now it feels like this is finally his time to move to Europe, and that, again, we'll see whether or not if he is going to do well with LAFC, and maybe that would be his route to do. So, I mean, if you're LAFC, this is going to be interesting because, you know, I know Acosta says that he wants to play hard for LAFC, but you know deep in his mind he's not happy the fact that he's going to another MLS team. And, you know, it's also going to be interesting for Kellyn Acosta himself, too, because, you know, as much as you are upset the fact that you're staying in MLS and you aren't going to make your dream move to Europe, you don't want to just simply not play well with LAFC and not even try, because if you don't put up a good performance like he has done with his time with the Rapids and also during his time with FC Dallas, and continue to be frustrated about this move, he's not going to make his dream move to Europe anytime soon. So for me, I think Acosta should just kind of put his head down and just keep playing the way that he is, and maybe LAFC will eventually sell him off to Europe. I mean, LAFC is a team that has a history of selling players to Europe, so it's a good club for him to be there to potentially make that jump to Europe. And not to mention, he is going to be with a team that is going to be a playoff contender. I was going to say cup contender, but obviously, you know, no, I don't want to fall into the trap of what the media always said about how LAFC are kind of the favorite of an MLS Cup contender. But he's going to be on a good team, and I think with him being on a good team, continue to develop his career before finally making his move to Europe is definitely a good thing. Now, speaking of good team, the Seattle Sounders is definitely a good team, despite what happened in the playoffs last season, and they're looking to solidify that by now finally getting the price that they've been looking for throughout the whole offseason. And then, of course, it's Albert Rusnak, who they have officially signed him on a DP contract. Now, would I decide to sign Rusnak on a DP contract? Maybe. I mean, you know, the Sounders, they definitely, I think, have one DP slot open, and that it's also going to be interesting to see where Rusnak is going to play, because, you know, he's currently playing around the same position that Nico Lodeiro is playing, and I know Lodeiro has been started to get up to that age, but he's still a top 5 number 10 in my opinion, and that, you know, we definitely see that when he came back from injury, he started to kind of look like the Lodeiro that we know of. So, you know, you don't want to maybe put Rusnak on the bench, so you might maybe have to ship out to another position, unless if Lodeiro decides to move to another spot, which I don't think that's going to be the case. So this is kind of a very interesting signing, though it definitely does bolster the fact that now the Sounders attack is absolutely loaded. Like, you know, they now got Rusnak, Lodeiro, Morris, and then potentially Rudia, which, you know, I'll talk about a little later. I got some good news for Sounders fans that's been wondering whether or not if Rudia is coming back to this team. And not to mention in the midfield, they also have some good player in Rodon and João Paulo. And then we know about their backline of being one of the best backline in the league. I mean, this team is going to be absolutely loaded heading into next season. And they're making a statement saying that, you know, after what happened last year, you know, they're looking to not try to repeat that again. They want to finish first in the Western Conference, which most likely it's not going to happen because we know they're going to find some way to finish second in the Western Conference, as it is the tradition for the Seattle Sounders. But it doesn't matter. They'll go into the playoffs and definitely, once again, I think will be the team to beat in the West next season too. Now, Nashville SC have sold Rodrigo Pinheiro to Chilean side Union Hispaniola for $1.7 million. Now, this is kind of an interesting situation with Rodrigo Pinheiro, where, you know, I remember when Nashville bought him last season, there was definitely some excitement about him potentially maybe push into the starting role, and he just never kind of got comfortable with Nashville. And I think this is just kind of the case where they decided to sell him off for a little bit of a profit, and they are going to get some profit for $1.7 million out of it. But, you know, it's a shame the fact that, you know, Pinheiro never worked out with Nashville, but we'll see how he's going to do. Now he's going to be going back to Chile. Former Orlando City star Nani. Well, it looks like he is not hanging up the boots yet, because he is now going to be going to Syria and going to a team that is known to take on MLS player, and that of course is Valencia. I mean, he's joining the likes of Bucio and Tanner Tessman in that club. And by the way, today he actually made his first appearance with Valencia off the substitute bench, and he even got an assist in terms of that game. So it's a dream debut for Nani for him to be there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to do. I mean, his career is definitely winding down, and I think the whole reason why Valencia want to sign him is because they want to have a big name so that they can hope to stay off relegation in Syria. I mean, they are kind of in a bit of a relegation battle right now, Valencia, and I think Nani will definitely be a guy that will help them stay off relegation, because even though I know Nani has definitely fallen from what we saw last season with Orlando City, he is still a player that I think it is going to be decent enough in Syria, and especially to help a team to fight off relegation. But yeah, you know, it's great. It's been definitely a joy to watch Nani play with Orlando City, and even though I know it's a shame the fact that he didn't really achieve much in his time in MLS. I mean, he came close of winning that MLS's back tournament silverware with Orlando City, but you know, there's definitely some big moment that Orlando City fans, and certainly MLS fans, can remember what Nani has done in this league. Now, Charlotte FC have signed former Luz goalkeeper Adrian Zidane off a free agency, and you know, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a backup goalkeeper for Charlotte, knowing the fact that, you know, Zidane just didn't really get a lot of playing time, if any playing time, with the Loons. And it doesn't help the fact that when you're literally the third string goalkeeper, and the two other goalkeeper in that team is named Tyler Miller and Dane Sinclair. So it makes sense why he maybe think about moving to somewhere else. Although, again, joining Charlotte, I don't think he's going to be a starter for the team. I think maybe he's going to be just in a backup role. But nevertheless, you know, being in a backup role is better than just being a third string goalkeeper, where a lot of things need to go right in order for you to finally get a chance to get some playing time. Now, Sporting KC have signed free agent Courtney Ford. Remember Courtney Ford, of how he was definitely labeled as a very talented young American with the Colorado Rapids, and there was even some case that he could potentially be a future U.S. men's national team defender. Yeah, it hasn't really kind of worked out, and it's such a shame the fact that, you know, his career has been just pushed back by so many injuries that he's been dealing with. And, you know, hopefully him going to Sporting KC is going to give him another chance to restart his career. I mean, overall, I think this is a good signing for SKC, because, you know, Courtney Ford, I think he is definitely a good option in terms of that depth in the back line, but especially the fact that I also kind of want to root for Courtney Ford and hope that he can do well, because he's been through a lot, and you got to also remember he's only 25 years old despite going through a lot, and it will be such a great feel-good story if he does succeed with Sporting KC, and that maybe he can get his career back on track after suffering just so many injuries in these past couple of years that has really derailed his potential that he once was with the Rapids a couple of years ago. Now, speaking of injury, Orlando City, they decided to re-sign a guy that has been one of the most infamous player in terms of always dealing with injuries, and that, of course, is Alexandra Patton. Now, I understand why Orlando City decided to re-sign him, because, right now, they're still kind of looking into the option of trying to replace Daryl DK. I mean, I've heard about how they are going to bring in that Pinero number 9 and sign him for a big amount of money, but nothing is official yet. So for now, they're kind of just using this as a stopgap, and maybe if that move does fell through, then getting Alexandra Patton as your main number 9 is not really a bad option either. I mean, as long as he doesn't get injured, which it's tough to say, because we know that he's basically a walking injury player throughout his career, but there's no doubt that he is definitely a better option than the current number 9 position that they had. I mean, if I had to choose between Tesha Akindele or Alexandra Patton, and this is no disrespect to Akindele, but I would definitely take Patton, even though if Patton is a guy that has been suffering with numerous injuries throughout his career. Now, the Portland Timbers have re-signed midfielder Diego Chara till 2024, so they have re-signed their captain, and that it's great to see that Diego Chara is going to be sticking around with the Timbers, and I have a feeling most likely he's going to be retired as a Timbers player. I mean, I'm pretty sure after what the Timbers saw with Diego Valeri leaving, and it's such a shame that he couldn't retire with the team, and him going back down to Argentina, they're making sure that's not the same case with Diego Chara. And by the time 2024 comes, I think he'll be 37 or 38. He'll be really close to that age where Chara might be thinking about hanging up his boots. But for now, when you look at how Diego Chara has been playing, he still got it. Like he is literally an ageless wonder with the way that he is still game in and game out. Look like the prime Diego Chara that we know in just a couple or about 5 years ago, and it's no doubt that the Timbers are looking to try to secure him and hope that he can continue to be that ageless wonder and continue to put up some great performance in the defensive midfield in the league. Like I've always said, that Diego Chara is the best defensive midfielder in the league, and he's continued to prove that throughout his long career that he has with this Timbers side. Now, RSL have signed forward Axel Kai and become the league's youngest player ever. Now, normally I don't usually talk about homegrown signing in the news of the week, because there's always tends to be tons of homegrown signing at a point where if I was going to do that, it's going to take forever for me to talk about in the news of the week. But I want to mention this homegrown signing because remember, I think last year I talked about in one of my news of the week episode that Axel Kai is going to becoming the youngest professional soccer player in the U.S. when he joined Real Monarchs at 13 years old. Well, now he's going to become the youngest player to ever play in MLS, just beating Freddie Adu about 100 days when he joined RSL. And although I know he's probably not going to be in the starting lineup straight away with RSL, I mean, I as much as I've heard some good things about him, I don't think he's going to be like the next Freddie Adu, and I'm pretty sure he probably don't want to be the next Freddie Adu with the way that even if there's a lot of hype surrounding him early in his career, and then it kind of maybe live up for a bit, but then it gets to a point where it's just too much hype. Then yeah, that could be a bit of a problem, and that's kind of one of the things that I think we might have now learned from the Freddie Adu situation, where Freddie Adu, he just got too much hype. Like there was just way too much hype for a kid that was only 16 years old, and by the time he was like 20 or stuff, he just never able to live up to the hype. And I'm hoping this is going to be the same case for Axel Kai, where as incredible as he could potentially be at a young age, let's not hype up this kid, and let's not say he's going to be a future U.S. men's national team forward, because that is at the very least going to be like 7 years down the line. Like he's only 14 years old. By the time when the World Cup is going to be happening here in the U.S., he's still only going to be a 19-year-old kid. So yeah, I don't think right now we should kind of hype him up too much, and we'll see how, of course, he will do and continue his development career, because he has a long career ahead of him. Like a 14-year-old signing for a professional team, that's definitely something. You know, we have seen more of that with young players signing with teams and be a kind of homegrown player, but 14-year-old, even then, that's a really young age. And I also won't be surprised he's going to be heading off to the development league that MLS, of course, have with MLS Next Pro, because again, that's the only reason why that league has now started to develop is giving these young kids a chance to develop, and they can maybe break into the main team, or maybe even they could get a chance for a lot of those scouts in Europe to scout them, and maybe be them moving on to a European team even before when they get a chance to play for their MLS team. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, and now talk about some transfer rumors. So we're going to return to talk about Adam Buksa and his transfer situation, and apparently New England says that $9.5 million that Pisa basically offer to trying to get Adam Buksa is not enough. And I'm not surprised, because I've even said that seems like pretty low for a guy that they bought $10 million. And you know, New England, they're very smart in terms of thinking about how if we bought him for $10 million, if we sell him off for $9.5 million, we just kind of lost a couple of money, or lost a couple of $100,000 and lost some money in terms of developing him into a great player. And right now it seems like they are demanding about 15 to, well, actually I was gonna say 5, but 10 to 15 million dollar in order to for them to sell Adam Buksa. Now obviously that price is incredibly high for a Serie B team, and even for a Serie A team, that's kind of, especially if you're like one of those bottom feeder team in Serie A, that is still a relatively high price. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not if Pisa is going to accept that. And honestly, for New England, it's not the worst idea for them to not sell Adam Buksa and just kind of hold on to him, because he's such an important player in that attack. And if he does continue to do well in his third season with New England, then they can get even more money out of him and maybe sell him off in the summer transfer window. So yeah, again, I think this is going to be a very interesting situation of, you know, whether or not if the Revs are going to move on from Buksa or not. But at least one thing I know is that they're playing it smart, knowing the fact that when they first bought him for that amount of money, I mean, I even say when they first bought him for that amount of money, they better hope he turns out to be a huge hit and they can able to sell him for almost the same amount of money. And at least in the first season, it definitely did not look like it, but in his second year, he definitely has been looking like the $10 million signing that New England got from him a couple of years ago. And again, I'm not surprised the fact that they're not selling him for anything that they bought the amount for him a couple of years ago. Now, there's also a report suggesting that Brian Rodriguez and Ezequiel Barco are linked to loan with Brazilian Serie A club Internacional. Now, with Ezequiel Barco, I'm not surprised the fact that Atlanta is looking to try to loan him, or maybe even sell him off to somewhere else. I mean, it is pretty clear that the only reason why Thiago Amanda has not been with this Atlanta team is that they still need to free up one of their DP slot, and they're having a tough time in terms of doing so. I mean, earlier we knew it was going to be Barco, the one that is going to free up that DP slot, so Thiago Amanda will be coming into this team. But ever since the fact that the transfer rumor front about Ezequiel Barco has been relatively quiet, I mean, Atlanta is kind of stuck in this limbo in the situation where they can't really bring Thiago Amanda there to comply with the league free DP maximum, and the fact that they're trying their best in terms of eventually free up that spot. So, you know, again, I think you can clearly see that this could potentially be happening, where Barco is going to be going to Internacional. Though I will say that it's kind of a bit of a surprise, the fact that Barco is going to be going to a club where, you know, there's still a well-known club, Internacional, but it's definitely not as big as some of those big clubs like Palmeiras, as we have heard a couple of MLS players there. And I thought Barco last season, he definitely performed well enough where he can potentially make a good jump to Europe. And again, it's kind of surprised that not a lot of European team is taking taking any offer for Atlanta in order to get Ezequiel Barco, or maybe the fact that maybe Atlanta might have been set the bar a little bit too high in terms of transfer fee for Barco, and that's why not a lot of European team is able to do so. Now, with Brian Rodriguez, his case, this is interesting because, Brian Rodriguez, he's been spending on loan with different clubs so far. I think he was on loan in Spain and with Almeria, and this is kind of interesting now. He's going to be going down to South America on a loan. I mean, there's not a lot of players that has kind of make their jump to Europe on a loan and then come back to an MLS team only to go on loan once again to go down to South America. But, this could be a possibility. And, I also feel like if there is a chance that, if one of these players most likely is going to stay in MLS, it's probably going to be Brian Rodriguez, especially the way that I think LAFC, they're still trying to navigate in terms of how they can replace Diego Rossi. And, well, Brian Rodriguez is not kind of a like-to-like replacement. He's still going to be a guy that can really help out this LAFC attack. And that, again, I just feel like if you're LAFC, it's probably smarter to just retain Brian Rodriguez until maybe the summer transfer window, or maybe even next offseason when they do sell him off to somewhere else in South America or in Europe. But we shall see how this situation is going to be. But now moving on, in terms of the next news is Toronto. So there is a report that they're looking to trying to swap Jefferson Soteldo in order to get Tigres center back and Mexican international center back Carlos Salcedo. Now, this is kind of an odd move because, I get that they want to sell Soteldo because, they want to basically free up one of their DP slots so that they can maybe sign a number 9 in this team after we know that Josie Altidore most likely is on his way out. So for them to get rid of him and maybe sign Carlos Salcedo on a DP contract, that's kind of a little bit strange. And especially the fact that I feel like, there's always a cardinal sin in terms of the designated player rule where you should never give your goalkeeper on a designated player contract. But it's also kind of a cardinal sins too, and in some ways, sometimes we've seen where there's many times when you sign a defender to a DP contract, it can backfire in a big way. And I'm not saying Carlos Salcedo is a bad player. I think he's a decent player, and he will definitely stabilize that TFC backline that was an absolute mess last season. But, if you're going to use a DP slot on him, I don't think that really is a good option. And especially you potentially leaving Jefferson Soteldo behind, and that Soteldo, I thought, even though some people might think that he did not live up to his expectation, he actually did well last season. I mean, he quietly registered everything like 9 assists last season with TFC during his short time there, and you can definitely see he definitely had some good talent in him. So yeah, we'll see whether or not if TFC is going to go for it. I mean, personally for me, I wouldn't. If I'm TFC and I'm really desperately looking to try to fix up that back line, why not look within the league or even look within in the draft too? Because right now, from what we've seen with a lot of back lines in MLS, a lot of the back lines are usually coming from the draft, and knowing the draft this season was very heavily loaded in terms of center backs and fullback position, I'm surprised why TFC didn't think about using that. Or maybe go around the league, look at free agency, and maybe pick a defender off of there, or even trying to go to other teams and maybe swap some general allocation money in order to get him, instead of just maybe going to another country or going to another league like Liga MX and trying to sign a defender on a DP contract when you could have used that same DP contract on an attacker. But we shall see how this is going to work out. And then finally, the last news on this board, because, for those of you that don't know, this is actually not the only news that I'm going to talk about, as there's actually more news on the other board that I have over there. But the last news on this board regards to the Seattle Sounders, who there is a report suggesting that João Paulo is pretty much locked with a contract extension with the Seattle Sounders, and that the Sounders is about to announce in a couple of hours or even tomorrow. But the big news that come out of this news is Raul Rudia. So throughout the winter, there's been just nothing we have heard about Rudia's situation ever since there's the talk that he was going to leave the Sounders because he's not happy with the front office. now it seems like that relationship has been repaired, and that he's also close to a contract extension. Again, this is huge news if you're the Seattle Sounders, and definitely great news too, because Rudia, he is definitely one of the top tier number 9 in this league, and losing him, I mean, it's going to be an incredibly big blow to the Sounders team, but it is definitely going to be a blow with the way that he is their leading goal scorer next season, and you lose that trusted goal scorer up top heading into next season. So yeah, I think holding on to Rudia, even though he is starting to approach his 30s, is definitely a good idea. And this is also why I said earlier that the Sounders, they can hold on to not only João Paulo but Rudia, and on top of the fact that they got Rusnak, Ladero, and Morris healthy. Oh boy, that front line is going to be the scariest front line in the league, and I would not want to face that front line every day. And unfortunately, the team that I root for, the San Jose Earthquakes and Minnesota United, they are in the Western Conference, and that means they have to play against Seattle twice. And yeah, I'm definitely not looking forward to facing that strong of a front line heading into next season. But that being said, I am now going to switch board and look at the last couple of news that happened in these past couple of days. But yeah, moving on, in terms of next news, is FC Dallas, who is looking to try to loan one of their well-known player from their academy, and this time it's defender Justin Che, report to go on an 18-month loan with Hoffenheim with an option to buy. And I won't be surprised that option to buy is going to be exercised, because there's definitely some upside you saw with Justin Che last season, and that you just kind of feel like, even with his time with FC Dallas, he's going to be most likely be a player that's going to be sold off in the winter or even go on loan. And indeed, this seems like it is going to be the case. And if it is going to be the case, then it's good on Justin Che. I mean, it's about time for him to get a chance to test himself in Europe, and a guy that I think U.S. men's national team fans will also would keep an eye on, because he could definitely be a guy that could be on the national team radar in case if he does well with Hoffenheim, and especially if he does do well and even get some first team minute, don't be surprised that option to buy will be exercised. Now, another highly rated youngster that is looking to make his jump to Europe and go on loan is Bassett, who is reported that the Rapids are going to loan Bassett to Feyenoord. Now, I'm not sure exactly how long the loan period is going to be, and I'm not sure was there an option to buy, but all it said is that the Rapids is reported to loan Bassett to Feyenoord. And Bassett is another player that, despite the fact that he was definitely very snake bit last season, and he is a guy that just kind of treat hitting the post like scoring goals, he is definitely a very highly talented player from the Rapids, and probably the most highly sort homegrown in this team besides Sam Vines there with the Rapids a couple of years ago. So yeah, I think this is definitely a good move, and let's see if this, of course, will work out. And joining a club like Feyenoord, a team that is very well known in the Eredivisie and in the Netherlands, I think it's going to definitely help his career. I mean, ideally, he would also, if he was going to go to Netherlands, it would be maybe better if he does join another team that is well known in the Netherlands called Ajax. I mean, that team that always develops some world-class talent and before selling them all for a big profit. Yeah, I think ideally he would love to join Ajax instead of Feyenoord, but Feyenoord is not a bad team either. And again, the Dutch league is known with a ton of these young players, and that has very high upside, and that there a lot of those teams also decide to sell those high upside to other leagues, because that's how they want their leagues to operate. Almost similar to a certain league that I know right now, the country that I'm living in. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, is FC Dallas is reported to offer up to $7 million for Independiente winger Alan Velasco. Now, if this does happen, welcome FC Dallas to MLS 3.0. I mean, it seems like they finally accept the fact that they need to spend some money, or at least be a little bit more ambitious in terms of their transfer. And again, if this does happen, it finally shows that FC Dallas has officially arrived in the MLS 3.0 era. And from what I heard, he is definitely a very highly talented player, and could even be better than the previous option that they have in the winger position in Michael Barrios. But we'll see if this move does complete. And again, this is really the first time we've seen Dallas are actually being this ambitious. Like, this is certainly something that I think for the fans of the team, they're probably be very surprised, but also very happy that finally the Dallas front office that has been notorious in terms of not spending money and being very penny pinching in terms of this signing, they finally see that maybe that is not the way for them to build a decent team. Now, the Portland Timbers is report in advance talk with Estudiantes midfielder and Argentine youth international David Ayala. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I think it's actually pronounced David Ayala because, you know, he is Argentine. And, you know, I wonder if this is maybe a replacement for Diego Valerio after he departed this offseason. I mean, I guess it's probably not, because I thought Blanco was going to be the one that takes over that spot. And by the way, speaking of Blanco, it is still really shocking the fact that there has been no news from the Portland Timbers regarding Sebastian Blanco and whether or not if he's going to return to the team. And, you know, we're getting close to the beginning of the season and also in the preseason. And, I mean, I'm just shocked. The fact that the Timbers decided not to re-sign Blanco. And especially, you know, can you imagine the Timbers would lose both Valeri and Blanco in the offseason? That would be a devastating blow in terms of fan morale of the team. And not to mention, speaking of fan morale, there seems to be a bit of a standoff between the Timbers Army and the front office right now, and that the relationship between both of them is definitely freckling after some allegation that has gone on, especially with the NWSL team that the Timbers front office and ownership also own. But yeah, I'm assuming most likely they are going to re-sign Sebastian Blanco. It's probably going to be a matter of time. But at least with this signing, you know, we'll see how he's going to do and whether or not if he's going to get some regular minutes. And maybe this might be a signing for them to think about when they eventually maybe move on from Sebastian Blanco. Now, Jamaican international defender Damian Lowe, remember him with the Seattle Sounders when the Sounders came into the league, and also during his brief stint with Minnesota United when the Loons was in the NSL days. He's coming back to MLS. He has signed a 2-year deal with Inter Miami, and I guess this is another example of Chris Henderson decided to bring in some of his former Sounders player to come to the team. And so far, it's been kind of a mixed bag. I mean, there are some Sounders players that joined Inter Miami did well, and then there are some that did not work out so well. I mean, one example is Calvin Leardam and Roman Torres. They didn't really last with Inter Miami that long. So we'll see whether or not if Damian Lowe is going to be lasting with Inter Miami for a long time. I mean, people forget he is still a relatively young defender. Like, even though it feels like he's been around for a long time, he's only 28 years old. So yeah, I think this is going to be interesting to see how it's going to be, and I'm assuming he's going to thrust right into the starting role because, you know, LGP is no longer there with Inter Miami, and, you know, I'm assuming him and Figueroa will be the partnership in terms of that back line for this Inter Miami team for this upcoming season. Now, Nottingham Forest left back Gaetan, I think that's how you say his first name, but I know his last name as it is Bong, is reported to close to sign CF Montreal. And, you know, this is also kind of an interesting one too, because I thought they already have Alistair Johnston in that left back role. So why in the world did they decide to maybe get another left back? I mean, I guess maybe this is for Def, and he's going to be kind of like that second choice left back behind Alistair Johnston. But, you know, if he does come into the name, boy, this is going to be a very interesting name to talk about, because anytime when we have to talk about a last name that ends with Bong, yeah, there's going to be that reference that I will not talk about, but you probably know what that is going to be about. Now, Christian Titty Ortiz is reported to reach a deal to play for Charlotte FC. Now, this seems like it's a very Miguel Angel Ramirez guy, because he actually played under MAR during the time when he was with Cholos. Though I have heard from some Cholos fans that he's not really actually that good, and he's actually a guy that, even though he is a number 9, he doesn't score as much goals as you think he would be. But we'll see if it, of course, will work out. And again, you know, it's no surprise the fact that, you know, Miguel Angel Ramirez almost trying to go with the Mateus Almeida era, trying to pick out his former player down in Liga MX or even down in Argentina, and hope that he can feel a successful team to at least guide the Charlotte FC team to be respectful in the expansion season. But now moving on, in terms of now talking about some general news. Iko Para has been named as Sporting KC2 assistant head coach, and it's great to hear that because, you know, I think Iko Para, I've talked about how ever since he decided to retire from his playing career in an unfortunate way, he definitely has a future of being a good head coach, and this is a good step for him to do so. You know, joining a team that basically he made himself a name and winning an MLS Cup with, that is Sporting KC2. Or no, not Sporting KC2, but more like Sporting KC. But now he's going to be stay with the organization as an assistant head coach there. And then finally, the last news on this board is the Canadian national team. They will not have Alphonso Davies due to heart-related issue heart issue related to COVID infection that he suffered during the World Cup qualifier. And while this definitely is another setback for the Canadian national team and their hope to qualify for the World Cup, I don't think it's as bad as a blow as we think it is. And keep in mind, Canada actually did pretty well, even though they didn't have Alphonso Davies during that November World Cup qualifying. Heck, they beat Mexico without Alphonso Davies in that famous frozen tundra game, also known as the Azteca game at Edmonton. So I think they're going to be fine, even though they're not going to have Davies. I mean, ideally they want to have him because then it will definitely help this team even more and get their chances of potentially getting closer to qualify for the World Cup. But it just also tends to show that, you know, the Canadian national team, even with their most talented player not play, they can still be a good team. And this is kind of the difference we've seen with this Canadian national team and just the rise that they had in these past couple of years is just absolutely amazing. And I think a lot of that they will definitely fake MLS, and certainly they kind of almost taking a page out of the U.S. men's national team, where they're going to take some young talented MLS player alongside with some Canadian player that has done well in the European League, and hope to field a team that is going to be hope to qualify for the World Cup this year in Qatar. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash that subscribe button. And I know it's another long news of the week episode, but I've said before, when the season was about to end, that you're going to have these episodes where there's so many news that has gone on, especially we're getting pretty close to the regular season, and in some way preseason I think is going to start as soon as next week, because, you know, there's going to be some teams that's going to be playing some preseason game, and especially these teams that is in CCL. I think they're already in preseason right now. But yeah, it's an exciting time in MLS, and I told you guys that it doesn't take a long time before the shortest off-season in MLS is going to be over, and we're going to be talking about MLS games and doing previews and reviews of those games soon. But yeah, until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all these news on this board and also on the other board. And if there's any news I didn't mention on both of those boards, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.